So today I'm going to do two things. I'm going to throw this very fast and very furiously. So let's see if I can do this. So, hello, my name is Ben Friedman here from the Beniverse Movie Channel. And of course, today we are talking on this channel Fast and the Furious 10, also titled Fast X. And let's just get into it here on the channel. Hello, my name is Ben Friedman, film critic with such publications such as Highbrow Magazine, and today I'm going to be reviewing the latest installment within the Fast and Furious, the 11th installment in fact, entitled Fast X. This movie has a reported budget of $350 million, and I want you to keep that in mind when I discuss this film. But let's just talk about Fast X. At this point, you know this series, you know this franchise, you know these characters. In fact, a review for this film seems a little weird because I don't think anyone is walking into the Fast and Furious franchise on the 11th installment and thinking, you know, I don't know. I'm kind of in or out on this franchise. I don't really have an opinion on it. I'm like, I don't know if I like this. Everyone either knows this is their type of film or it's not their type of film. What I am going to say about the Fast and Furious franchise is I can enjoy these films for what they are. I find them big, dumb summer movies that ultimately deliver on thrills, on the excitement, lack character development, lack story, lack cohesive story, definitely defy all logics of physics, and yet I can enjoy them for what they are. Now, I will say that when this franchise works its best is when it incorporates humor, when it is a little self-referential, when it understands how ridiculous and dumb it is. My problems with a few of the previous installments, such as Fate of the Furious, which is the 8th installment, and what was the last one called? I think it was, F9. F9? My issues with them is when they become way too over-seriously. One of the charms of this franchise is Vin Diesel's Dom Toretto, who is taking this source material as an actor way too seriously, and he's playing it so straight where everyone else is kind of knows exactly the type of movie they are making, and yet Vin Diesel isn't joking around. He's being completely serious in his presentation of the character of Dom Toretto and treating this as a legitimately, I think he views himself as a legitimately great character actor as Dom Toretto, and everyone else is having fun. And that dynamic, along with the dynamics of everyone else who is aware of the joke of the Fast and Furious movies, which is that they are ridiculous, when that is working in tangent, I think these movies can shine. And my problem with the last few installments, specifically F9, when you bring in an actor like John Cena to portray Dom Toretto's brother, and he makes Cena so self-serious, and Charlize Theron comes in the 8th movie, and she's so serious, and there's a gun pointed at a baby, or Dom's ex dies, that's when the franchise can lose me. So with that all said, let's go into Fast X, which Fast X, as most of these Fast and Furious movies does, retcons the events of previous movies. In this case, it's the retconning of Fast 5. We learned that the character in that film, Hernan Reyes, he has a son portrayed by Jason Momoa. And Jason Momoa plays Dante Reyes, who is basically the Joker. That's not a spoiler or anything. Jason Momoa channels Heath Ledger's Joker quite obviously in this role, and he's very tongue-in-cheek, he's very funny, he's very charismatic, he's also a complete psychopath. This character of Dante is just a straight-up loon. He is a cartoon character come to life. At one point, he is talking to dead corpses. He has some of the greatest fashion in a movie this year. I mean, just straight up, Jason Momoa is chewing the scenery and just loves to be in just bright, exotic outfits. He's having a ball with this role. He is truly chewing up the scenery. But anyway, Dante Reyes is out for revenge on Dominic Toretto, and he's seeking to basically get revenge by killing everybody that Dominic loves, this family of sorts, as it's been described in these movies. And let's start with, I guess, this guy, Dante Reyes, portrayed by Jason Momoa. I've said the issues that I've had with the previous installments have been largely focused on Charlize Theron and John Cena's portrayal of these characters. They're very self-serious. This franchise feels like it's taking itself too seriously. And what this film, Fast X, is able to do is Jason Momoa comes in and he completely changes that dour energy that I have had with the previous installments and gets it back to this big, ridiculous spectacle, which I think is when the Fast and Furious films work best. Jason Momoa is really kind of front and center in this film. I would guess outside of Dominic Toretto, he easily has the second most screen time, and he's chewing the scenery. And I've already said that phrase a lot, but that doesn't even describe how much he's chewing the scenery. He is really something else in this movie. I don't know if this performance is necessarily good. It's so over the top, it's so ridiculous, but it does match the entertainment that I want this franchise to have, where I'm just like, this is so silly that I like that they're at least willing to go this silly. And yet this character of Hernan actually is threatening. He actually does damage. You see how this guy is such a threat to Dominic Toretto and the other crew members. And that's why I liked what Jason Momoa is doing. Again, I wouldn't call this a particularly worthwhile performance and worthwhile villain performance, but for what this film needs it to be, it is totally complementary to the Fast and Furious franchise. And it does so in a way that adds to the fun of this film. And that's ultimately what I liked about Fast X. I had fun with this movie. In a franchise that I felt like was getting long in the tooth, this one felt closer to the Fast and Furious films that I like. Full disclosure, my favorites installments of this franchise are Fast 5, Fast and Furious 6, and Furious 7. That's where I think the antics are at the highest. That's where I think the characters are at their most fun. And that's where I feel like the world and the ridiculous nature of it is perfectly encompassed in it. And then, like I said, as the films go on, they get a little too self-serious for my taste. This one brings me back to what I like about Fast 5, and having it so directly tied to Rio, which is where the destruction, of course, happens in Fast 5, it works on a not necessarily nostalgia level, but it does work in kind of rekindling that magic of Fast 5, which is what most people would agree is the best Fast and Furious movie. One of the issues that I have with this film, and I'm going to sound too critical and too nerdy, and on full disclosure, probably too pretentious, is I'm going to talk about the film structure of this movie. And I realize in talking about it, I am talking about a Fast and Furious film, so that is a little ridiculous to be going all film school on it. But these films do need to have a structure. And the structure that has worked is when these films are about family, when it is the crew together, when they are going on these wild, crazy antics, the films usually play to good success. And when they deviate from that formula, the reception seems to be lower and the box office seems to be lower. Fast X, I'm really curious to see how it does financially, because while it does have this wild, crazy Jason Momoa performance, and while other characters come into it, I should just shout out right now, John Cena as Dominic Toretto's brother in this film is so much better than he is in F9. Cena is able to display his natural charisma, his comedy skills. He is able to just make this role a little bit more goofier and way less self-serious than it was in F9, and that I really liked. I think Momoa and Cena are two of the big highlights in this movie. But what Fast X, does, is it separates the crew. And I'm going to call this phenomenon the Empire Strikes Back of the cast, where for the Empire Strikes Back, Luke is on his own mission with Yoda, and then Han and Leia are, of course, on Cloud City. We don't really get to see this crew reunited until the 6th installment in Star Wars. This largely does the same thing. Vin Diesel as Dominic Toretto is doing one thing in this movie. You have a few of the cast members, including Tyrese Gibson, Ludacris. They're doing their own thing in this movie. For large sections of the film, Jason Momoa is just talking through a walkie-talkie. You get other people like Michelle Rodriguez, who of course plays Dominic Toretto's wife, Letty. She's captured and with Charlize Theron, which is shown in the trailers. It's not a spoiler. So they're in one part of the world. Tyrese Gibson and Ludacris are on one part of the world. Jason Momoa and Vin Diesel are in one part of the world. John Cena's in America with Dominic Toretto's son. You just get all these characters separated, and they don't really ever come together in any meaningful way. And that is a problem with this film. It isolates Dominic Toretto. And when you isolate Dominic Toretto, the film is too self-serious and it struggles. Now, luckily, Jason Momoa is there to counterbalance some of Vin Diesel's rougher edges and trying to go so self-serious with it. But you do lose a lot of the fun. Had you get these characters interacting more together, you would feel more of a connection and having more fun. At least I would. I would have felt like this film was a little bit more funny and a little bit more breezy. Where at times I think this film can really get boggled down in story and cutting back and forth. Some of the editing is a little choppier. I will say that this is the first installment directed by Louis Leterrier, who is the director of such films as Now You See Me, The Incredible Hulk. He came in and replaced Justin Lin after Justin Lin had some, basically it sounds like a public meltdown / breakdown / relationship end with Vin Diesel, as have many of the Fast and Furious cast members at this point, probably most famously The Rock. It just sounds like Justin Lin and Vin Diesel's professional relationship ended, and Justin Lin was kind of forcefully either removed, or it sounds like Justin Lin actually probably just stepped down and didn't want to deal with the hassle of this budget going over large of Vin Diesel's antics. So have you. I will say Louis does a impressive enough job in this movie, and that's a little insulting. That sounds like I'm kind of degrading his work. One of the things that I like about Fast X is I said this is a $350 million budget film. It does look like $350 million. The spectacle is all there on the screen. You can tell they're in, if not the actual locations of Rome, of Europe, they're at least filming it to make it look real. It doesn't look computer generated by any accounts. The cars, when they crash and explode, those explosions look legitimate. And that all just works to, again, just make a film look like $350 million spectacle, which adds to the big stakes, the big fun of this movie. I suggest you get a big popcorn for this, because that is the level of popcorn entertainment you are getting for this. So I think Louis does a impressive job in his directing, and it never distracted me about how bad of it is. Now, again, some of the story beats do, and there is specifically 2 cameos in this film. One I will not touch. One of them, actually 3 cameos. 2 of them I will not touch. They happen towards the second half of the film. I won't touch them. One of them has already been made public by Deadline. It looks like Universal kind of got scared of the reception of this film and just decided to kind of get people kind of reinvigorated by bringing this person back. I'll talk about that in a later review. I'm not going to talk about the true cameos. The other one is in the poster. It's Jason Statham, so I don't think it's a cameo, but do realize his role is very cameo-like. It is just kind of a brief interaction for one scene, and then you're like, okay, he'll come back. And he doesn't really come back in any meaningful way. And this also comes back to the thing that Vin Diesel has very publicly made and said that Fast and Furious 10 is supposed to be now the first of a trilogy that will end with 12, where originally this was supposed to be the conclusion, ending in 11. Now it's this trilogy. And in that case, the film feels like that to some degree. You can really see them setting up something for the future. I don't want to call it Avengers Infinity-like, but it's Avengers Infinity-like. There's a lot of characters that are introduced. There's a lot of setup for what is going to happen. And there's a very definitive conclusion that if you care, you're going to be interested in seeing what happens in Fast and Furious 11 and 12, so on and so forth. It does do that effectively. Now, I will say this ending, without giving any spoilers, is very jarring. If the film just kind of ends very abruptly, and when it happens, you're like, here's what I will give this film some credit for. It does feel shorter than what I was thinking it was going to feel like. I think this film has a 2 hour and 20 minute runtime. It does not feel like that at all. The ending just happens. And when it happens, you're like, this scene is like, okay, you got at least another 20 minutes that you're going to get out of here. Nope, not that at all. The film cuts, and it cuts to directed by Louis Leterrier. And you're just like, oh, it's over. And it's a little shocking. I get why they did it. I'm going to be curious to see if maybe they should have either teased, or it's just a weird place to end this film. And it does just talk to the messiness of this franchise. But ultimately, this is the higher echelon of Fast and Furious films. If you've liked this series, I think you are going to really like this installment. If you don't like this series, I don't think you're going to like this installment. That's, I think, the simplest answer to this. And if you did like this franchise, but got out on it on some of the more recent installments, I definitely think Fast X could pull you back, especially if you like the tones more set forth by Fast 5, Fast and Furious 6, Furious 7. I think this is more a tone similar to those films rather than some of the more dour installments. It's big, it's loud, and I had fun watching this movie. Not necessarily sure I ever need to revisit this. One thing I do actually want to talk about, because I was about to forget it, there are some newcomers here that I wanted to talk about. The biggest of them that I haven't mentioned being Brie Larson as Tess, the daughter of Mr. Nobody, who's played by Kurt Russell. Her role is a little weird in this film. She's definitely billed really high in this movie, and they definitely advertise her. She's not a real presence in this movie. There are scenes that, again, when I talk about the setup for things to happen that are very directly tied to Brie Larson, she has this issue that I also thought that Vin Diesel has in this movie, where her tone's a little bit too self-serious as well. I wish Brie Larson is such a good comedic actress as displayed in films such as Scott Pilgrim or in 21 Jump Street, that I wish they focused more on that level of Brie Larson and less on her being this other heroine that can go alongside some of the other cast members. I wanted a little bit more from this character, and I just didn't think she gave a particularly good performance. But they set her up to be a much bigger force, and I hope they kind of do the Cena thing where they just kind of let a natural charisma exude from her, and they don't have her being the character that she is. I want her to have a little bit more fun than they gave her. And to be honest, they didn't really give her any great fight scenes. They didn't really do anything with her in this installment. It honestly felt like they could have waited for Fast and Furious 11 to introduce her and not in this film. But regardless, with that all said, I like this film. I had fun with it. I think you're going to have fun with it if you totally know what this movie is going to be. And I don't think this movie hides what it wants to be. And I think this film's greatest success comes with Jason Momoa. And its greatest weaknesses continue to be just the story, the ridiculousness of it, but also straying away from the family aspect, which, while it has become a meme at this point, there is a sincerity to it that works in these films, and this one, having them all not together, really does hamper the product overall. So I hope in the future installments we get to see them all kind of interacting. Again, to make another Marvel comparison, Avengers Infinity War has them largely split. Maybe this, in the next few ones, we have Endgame type style where they're all now working together to overcome the obstacles that are clearly set up for this film and moving forward with this franchise. So those are my hopes, and we'll see what actually happens. Anyway, Fast X, I'm giving it 3 out of 5 stars. I had a good time watching this movie. That's all I can really say on it. Anyway, all, thank you for watching this review of Fast X. If you like this video, do me a favor real quick. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that bell. Do that for me. It would really help me out. Anyway, my name is Ben Friedman, here from the Beniverse Movie Channel. If you have any movies you want me to review, just let me know. I'm always glad to watch movies. Thank you all for watching this video. Take care and bye-bye.